unwavering dedication.
Good morning. Rise and freedom. Ooh, we got new transitions today. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. It's the home of the free, the land of the For Liberty Network. That's right. 2 brand new shows coming this fall. I want to be a producer of a big podcast network. It's coming. Wow. 2 weeks. Okay, now I'm actually kind of scared. Time could just slow down. I'm looking at my calendar and all the things I'm trying to pack into my days to get ready for the launch, and also run the Wake Up America show, and also run ForLibertyShop.com, and also spend a little bit of time with my sweet little baby Hazel, and it's not working out. This is about how it's happening. My life, mein Leben, shits, Urs Mommy, John and KC, Nelson 65, Drew Van Runkle, Caleb Vanderfeltz, Andy Opperman, Floby Tenderson, gotta love that name. What's up, Cecilia Harden? I love seeing you over on X. I see you over there. Joni Rankin, my sweet little Joni. We're all friends here, aren't we? Welcome to the show. If we're all friends, then I know you've all clicked that like button, right? Some of you have not. Please do so. A vice presidential debate, and one for the history books. J.D. Vance squared off against Tim Walz, Minnesota governor, last night in a debate that was, again, horribly biased, slanted against J.D. Vance, but he definitely held his own. It was a fascinating case study in decorum. It's not what we're used to in debates these days, but the two men found themselves agreeing with one another. Someone contacted me last night and said that partially they wish that it was these two who were running against each other for president of the United States, but they added saying that, but they don't trust J.D. Vance. And another person I saw in the Rumble chat this morning was saying that they don't trust J.D. Vance. And I would be very curious to find out why you don't trust J.D. Vance, what it was that made you feel that way, because I wonder if maybe we don't trust him for the same reasons, you and I, or are they different reasons? I suspect that usually my problem is that I'm just a freaking weirdo. When I see how people think about things, most people, and I'm not saying this is you, but like for me, I almost always disagree with the majority of how people think. And it's not just like, there might be a reflexive contrarianism to me. Like my brother always says, I'm the kind of curmudgeonly, like, you know, the fly in the ointment, if you will, the stir of the pot, perhaps. But I always kind of see whenever, you know, I've got that Mark Twain quote in my head where he said, if you ever find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to reform. But, you know, this is not to denigrate other people's thinking. Sometimes I'm wrong. So, you know, it does happen. Can you believe I would say something like that? You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? Huh?
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Right.
You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.
Yeah, Drew Van Runkle over in the chat says, it's too bad they were agreeing on growing government. Yes, and the funny thing is that when I say I think that the reason I don't trust J.D. Vance completely, one, he's a politician, and two, is different from probably why most people don't trust him. Probably a lot of people on the right who say they don't trust him might be saying so because he used to not be a Trump guy and he used to say mean and nasty things about Trump. That's probably not you, the people who are listening to the audience, but there are the majority of people who don't trust Vance are probably like for that reason. But for me, it's because he agrees with Tim Walz and with Orrin Cass and with other labor socialists on economic issues that I just absolutely do not agree with as someone who believes in the primacy of the individual and in the goddamn right of an American businessman to make a living and not have the government on his back. I don't care If you wrote hillbilly elegy about your damn poor, stupid people in Appalachia, we need bigger government because I grew up poor as a hillbilly in Appalachia. Well, I don't give a shit. Everybody starts at different places in this world, but if the government doesn't step in and try and level the playing field because some retard hillbilly had to go live in live in the poorest part of the country instead of seeking opportunity elsewhere because they couldn't get a job in Rust Belt, whatever. And it's the same mentality as those dock workers out there on the thing. We don't want automation in our economy. We were going to get a 50% pay raise. Instead, no, they choose to bend over the American taxpayer, the American people, and screw us all royally, whether it's through government or whether it's through private, whether it's a left boot on my throat, a right boot on my throat, a government boot on my throat, a union boot on my throat. Makes no difference. I don't want any boots on my throats. Get them off. Otherwise, JD Vance did very well. Urs Mommy donated $10. Thank you, Urs Mommy. She wants to unlock the bonus content. She says, just ask yourself one question. What has the government done for the citizens that was good? I don't know. Won World War II? I mean, I guess that's the last time they did when Ronald Reagan got elected and cut taxes a little bit. Donald Trump did a lot of good for us the last time when he's the only president in my lifetime that has actually, to some extent, gotten government boots off of my throat. Not all of them. Not entirely, right? It's why I'm not like the MAGA hat wearing guy, whatever, right? I'm voting for Trump and I'm voting for JD Vance, but I don't trust him because I don't trust any politicians. The only politician that I really kind of trusts is Thomas Massey, right? And I trust him the most, right? Javier Milei of Argentina, I trust him a little bit as well, close to Massey level, right? But the rest of them can kind of just go to hell. There may be 2 or 3 other I could name, right? But I just don't trust politicians, don't love politicians, don't follow politicians, don't make them your example. Don't be like, oh, they're an example for my kids, like Camille and I were saying yesterday. Just be a normal living human being and avoid the state at all costs. Capitalism and free markets the point of free markets is to give us a chance to get away from the government, right? The point of having economic liberty is that we're supposed to get away from government power. Okay, so I'll stop the ranting. I know you guys want to see a million billion clips, and I have a million billion clips, and I have big brain time with Judge Napolitano at 8 a.m. Central Time. I'll ask him a little bit about some of this stuff. I also want to talk to him about Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, who's under federal indictment. And I think it's because of the comments that he made on immigration. And so does Eric Adams. So I actually agree with the Democrat about something here, why the feds are cracking down on him. We'll talk to the judge about that, see if he thinks that's a political prosecution as well, which, of course, that's pretty much everything these days. Most of the prosecutions that are happening these days on the federal level seem to be just politicized investigations against people's opponents for going against them. It's government by mafia, right? It's the Godfather. It's Michael Corleone, and it's Tessio, and it's Vito, and it's Hyman Roth. That's anti-Semitic. And they're all just bending us over and screwing us. And Abdul Muhammad Durka from Tajikistan trying to kill us at every turn. That's government for you. It's government as mafia. It's in some ways, it would be better to have a mafia as a government because the mafia only takes 10%. The mafia actually wants your government to succeed or your business to succeed. Because then if you fail, they don't get protection money. The IRS doesn't give a shit about your business. They just want their money. And they want a lot more than the mafia does. Sorry to go on this rant, guys. I know you want to see a million billion clips. I've got a million billion clips and a million billion memes. And at 8:30 a.m. Central Time, we're going to speak to Jack Lloyd, about this and other things. Jack Lloyd and his girlfriend, the PHOlosopher, released an End the Fed music video, but I really want to talk to him about the state of the liberty movement in the United States, especially with the launch of the upcoming For Liberty Network. I'm kind of excited for that, and I think, maybe these are people that we should work with. What do you guys think? All right, you've clicked the like button. I know you have. All right, we're going to have a fantastic day because Mongoose87 is here. How you doing, you schmexy boy? Let's hit the news. Tim Walz and JD Vance square off in a very cordial debate last night, but in which one person was very much outclassed by the other. Take a listen.
Mr. Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service.
Okay, that was a good line because we all sort of identify with that. Don't you miss the days when we used to ride our bikes around town until the streetlights came on?
I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that.
Dude, how are you going to admit you're a knucklehead at times and be taken seriously for president of the United States? And I guess, I mean, at least he admits it.
Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So
I got to pause for a minute because Nelson65 on that comment about he said he grew up in the country. We didn't have streetlights. True. Same for me. However, when I would visit my friends in the suburbs, we would ride bikes around the suburbs. And for me, that was like the sweetest thing ever. I had this whole situation where I grew up on a farm. So I always thought, oh, it was so much better to be in the suburbs with all the little kids and you could run around and do that stuff at night because I only got to do it every once in a while when I got to spend the night at my friend's house. So it was kind of rare for me as a farm boy as well, Nelson. We both were farm boys.
So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be...
Bro, this is a guy who crossed the DMZ and into North Korea, which Walz criticizes Donald Trump for doing that. And then he sort of touts his credentials for China, which he doesn't have. And now he's admitting that he misspoke and he lied. He lied about this. He lied about his record in other ways, his military service. And it's just a record of lies with this guy. But he's a politician, so what do you expect? The shocking thing to me, I think, is the surprising thing is he like directly admits it rather than sort of punt or avoid the question, which is what a lot of Democrats do. He kind of takes it head on, which, you know, I'm going to say, honestly, I'll give him a point for that because I feel like, you know, you never see politicians do something like that. So it's unique and interesting just by admission.
Praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about...
Yeah, well, don't like try and make it out as if like Donald Trump is like praising Xi Jinping like he really likes Xi Jinping. I mean, not when you had Gavin Newsom clean up the streets of Los Angeles for the first time in how many years? When Xi Jinping came to the visit for a visit in California, or was it San Francisco? Somebody correct me on that one if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I will admit it. And then AP went to the Mecca of all cities, NYC, and he said, F this, I'm out. Very true. Yes. I spent 11 years on the East Coast, and while I appreciated some of the cultural experiences that I had while I was there, some of the cultural experiences was a little too much culture, and I love my life here back in Missouri in a semi-rural environment. I won't say I live in the suburbs, but like on the edge of a suburb, on the outskirts of a suburb, if you will. And 5.5 acres is just enough space between me and other people, right? Just so that, you know, in case of any zombie apocalypse, you can see them as they cross in the field, right? You know, or anybody trying to steal your doomsday supplies, if you will. Don't come knocking on my door. Let's continue.
About trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
It kind of like made it sound like he was at Tiananmen Square, right? So he's like, no, I was just in China, in Hong Kong at the time these protests were going on, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, he lied. He lied. He got caught in the lie, and he admitted it. And I don't want to say anything nice about the guy, but busted, and fair game. The big scandal everybody's talking about this morning is the school shooters comment, which is kind of the wildest, weirdest thing that we heard. I apologize. Some of these clips might end up being repeats, but I was trying to get all of them in here. So if you hear two clips into the same clip, FYI, it's just, I'm trying to make sure I'm as thorough as possible in covering this for you. But here's the 5-second version of this.
I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was NRA.
Drew Van Runkle over in the chat says that I thought the $17.76 monthly subscription got access to the Peterson compound in the case of a zombie apocalypse. You thought wrong.
No, God, please, no.
That is the Benjamin Franklin version. You got to get now I've forgotten the highest tier of support. I have to go to my own website to see what it is to jog my memory. I've had my mind in the other shows so much. wakeupAmericashow.com/support. Let's check it out. Oh, come on, Austin. It says page not found. It doesn't exist or removed. I must have spelled something wrong. Hold on. wakeupAmericashow.com. What the hell? wakeupAmericashow.com. There we go. Click on support. Go to the very bottom level. Let's see. This is what'll get you into the compound. Oh, Benjamin's Brigade. There you go. Anyways, here's the weird clip from Tim Walz and school shooters. Sorry, I'm all over the place today, guys. I got a baby.
So I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to. So I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen.
Okay, pause for just a moment. Excuse me? You think I have the full context of that clip coming up in my million billion clips, but I'm not 100% certain. So I just want to make sure that we hear that all again.
So I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long.
So you were friends with school shooters. I mean, did you try and talk him out of shooting up the school? I mean, he was later asked if he would clarify that comment.
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast. And I think the ending.
Let's start that over.
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast. And I think the ending sums it up. The democracy issues important.
Governor, you said you become friends with school shooters during the debate. Can you clarify what you meant on that?
Can you clarify what you meant when you said you'd be friends with school shooters?
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
Excuse me? What? Okay. I'm noticing something here, right? There's a pattern. Okay. Now, as someone who does voiceover work professionally in an amateur fashion and who does radio, like I'm very attuned to people's voices and what it says about them and the tone that they're using, the language that they're speaking in, the accent that they might have. So I'm noticing something interesting about the voices of the three reporters that ask questions here. And I want you to go with me on a journey here. Maybe don't look at the screen. I want you to close your eyes and listen to this clip and listen to the three reporters. They ask two different questions. Three reporters asked two different questions. And I want you to listen to the sound of the voice of the reporter who asks the first question. And then I want you to listen to the sound of the voices of the two reporters who ask follow-up questions. You'll hear Walz respond to the first reporter's question and ignore the reporter's questions, the two reporters' questions who ask him the second question. So close your eyes. Let's listen to this together. Ask yourself, what can you tell about the journalists or the reporters from the sounds of their voices and the questions that they choose to ask? Close your eyes and listen along with me. This will be an interesting experiment.
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
Oh, just, I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast. And I think the ending sums it up. The democracy issue is important.
Governor, you said you'd become friends with school shooters during the debate. Can you clarify what you meant on that?
Can you clarify what you meant when you said you'd be friends with school shooters?
Pause right there. Okay, so what do you notice? Now, I don't want to lead the witness here. I want you to hear these people's voices, and you tell me what you notice about these three reporters and the two questions.
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
Governor, what do you think your strongest moment was tonight? What is interesting about that question? And what can you tell about the reporter from not only the question that they chose to ask, but the sound of their voice? What is it saying to you?
What do you think your strongest moment?
Governor, what do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
And then notice that when he answers the question, it's not so important as what he says, some stupid shit about democracy. But listen to again, you can actually hear the reporter respond to him again once he finishes his statement.
Oh, just, I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast. And I think the ending sums it up. The democracy issue is important.
Governor, you said you'd become friends with school shooters during the debate. Can you clarify what you meant on that?
My guy.
Can you clarify what you meant when you said you'd be friends with school shooters?
Oh, white woman.
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight?
Oh, just,
What do you think your strongest moment was tonight? Thank you. Thank you. After it's over, you can hear it again.
I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast. And I think the ending sums it up. The democracy issue is important.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tim. Oh, God. He spoke to me. Oh, my God. What are you saying, Austin? What are you getting at? Asked Blue Trike. If you don't get it, then you don't get it. One fluff question and two less fluffy ones. Well, they were less than fluffy. They were the other two questions were less than fluffy, and they were asked in a less than fluffy manner. Like, if you know anything about the industry, you know what a fluffer is. Her questions were very fluffy, if you will, right? What do you think your strongest moment was tonight? Oh my God. Right. The Wayne's World equivalent of, we're not worthy. We suck. What do you think is the most beautiful part of your body, sir? Can I please lick it? What is he getting at? What are you trying to say, Austin? I don't know, Blue Trike. What do you think I'm trying to say, sir? The Wake Up America show is brought to you as a part of the For Liberty Network's offerings. Good morning. It's 5 days a week that this show streams live. And it's alive because of people like you. The financial contributions that people like you make to keep the Wake Up America show on the air go directly right back into either freedom fighting or investing in the future of libertarian media, or it goes into the mouth of my little baby in a little bottle, because we've got a sweet little gorgeous upcoming redheaded libertarian girl in Hazel Rose Peterson. So thank you for all you do to support the show. So think about it. You go to forlibertyshop.com and you buy a box of Founding Flavors coffee and you go, well, It is a little pricey, but it is delicious. But also, it's helping to invest in the future of libertarian media. And isn't that really a win-win for everybody? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest, like Tim Walz was a little earlier. I'm a little disappointed. We launched the coffee brand. Maybe it's getting a little overshadowed by the For Liberty Network announcement. We announced that Founding Flavors Coffee now has pods. And people were like demanding pods. So, and we've sold exactly 0 pods. So, and we have to pay to be able to have the right to purchase these and sell these to you guys. So if we don't sell enough, then probably the pods are going to go away. So I'll give it a good 30-day try. But if you're the person and you're just finding out that we have coffee pods now for Founding Flavors, and you were the person who really wanted them, well, there you go. Head over to forlibertyshop.com. Go buy some now, because that'll help to unlock the bonus content. If we hit $60 raised either in Rumble Rants or YouTube Super Chats, and I'm pretty sure Joe Spinella or someone over on YouTube yesterday donated like $50 and I didn't see it. Thank you, Joe, or he who shall remain unnamed, simply because I didn't see. If it doesn't tell me later like who made a YouTube Super Chat, I'm sorry. But the answer, if we hit the $60 goal, then we will unlock the bonus content for you guys today before we go to Judge Andrew Napolitano. If you guys want to see today's bonus content, get those Rumble Rant donations in or go to forlibertyshop.com. Helping Freedom says, I contribute to Stonegate every month because I'm smart. That's true. Bucks Nasty joining us live again today. Bucks, welcome back. It's the Wake Up America Show, and you can find us right here on the For Liberty Network at forlibertynetwork.com. That's our locals page. Locals and Rumble have been helping us as sort of partners to launch the For Liberty Network, and they've created all this technology so that I'll be able to produce and manage 3 shows, my own, Culturama, and Liberty Tonight, coming October 15th at forlibertynetwork.com. So if you go to forlibertynetwork.com and you see it's a locals page, that's where we're going to be able to house all of our content effectively, efficiently, monetize it, grow our network so that we can hopefully have more shows. Because my dream would be to have about 12 hours of live programming during the day, and then another 12 hours of repeats from that day of content, live streaming content, the Wake Up America Show, Culturama, Liberty Tonight, Politics and Pies starring Camellia Peterson, Politically Homeless starring Justin Peterson, different Petersons, not related, right? And grow that network so we have like 12 hours of live programming. And then from there, depending on, finances depending, start, instead of having to go to some rich guy, because I've got my Battle of Athens documentary and I don't want to sell it to somebody. I don't want to have to give it away and give away the rights to produce it because they're going to come in with be the money guy. I want to be the money guy, right? I want to take $200,000 and go down to, Athens, Tennessee, and shoot that damn firefight that the local World War II veterans had with the police, the corrupt police officers when they stole those ballots, and shoot the damn Battle of Athens the way that it was meant to be shot, right? You got to have money for that. So can you bless me with something?
Can you bless me with something?
Oh, gosh.
Money-wise. Please.
Can you suck it?
What?
So head to forlibertyshop.com and try our new coffee pods. There we go. All right. Next up on the debate from last night, J.D. Vance did a very fine job. Yeah, you like those new transitions, huh?
To challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration.
Very smooth.
I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk talk about, it is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow.
I mean, who hasn't had that happen? How many people have we lost as friends because of Trump, right? Because they're so triggered by Trump.
Citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade.
Great job. Thank you, Frank and Beans. Thank you, Frank and Beans, for that $20 donation. Oh, my gosh. We appreciate that. We've raised, I believe, $30 towards the $60 goal. So we're halfway there. That's great, guys. Thank you. Yeah, I got those beautiful new transitions there working on the Wake Up America show. I'm always working to improve the show, try and add something new every day, new commercials, I make bonus content every day for the show. And, you know, to get that financial contribution like that, especially because I know times is hard, Frank and Beans, I'm very grateful. So thank you for being partially an investor in the Wake Up America shows for Liberty Network. And I'm grateful to all of you guys for helping to make it happen because, you know, showing dreams really do come true, that this can be done as a profession. You don't have to be a young, beautiful blonde or like a 10-year-old who opens toys to make millions of dollars or like explode things to be like Mr. Beast to be to do well in podcasting. You just have to have a good message and a good audience and be willing to kick ass every single day. I think you guys, you know, you recognize how I'm busting my ass on this show, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rule.
JD Vance, you're a lying piece of shit. Now we have to go to our next question.
That you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen,
they cut his mic. So they fact check him, which they said they weren't going to do. And then they try and move on. And then he tries to defend himself. I mean, honestly, that's what you want to do in a presidential debate. If you're J.D. Vance, those moderators are pieces of shit. Thus they are. Alas for you lawyers and Pharisees, hypocrites that you are. Bum, 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 bum. You drag them down with you. What's the line from Godspell? Prepare you the way of the Lord? I'm not sure. Liars and thieves, lawyers and Pharisees, hypocrites that you be. Here's Tim Walz on his firearm ownership.
I own fire. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but is there, but
be very, very quiet.
And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but
That's some FUD stuff there. Thank you to the Firearms Policy Coalition for that. Even CNN agrees that J.D. Vance won the debate.
I think there was a clear lack of preparation and execution here on Walz's part.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe, yeah.
He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when J.D. Vance said one of the many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed. He needed more reps.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
He shouldn't be. The guy is, 38, and Tim Walz is like 111? And of course, January 6th came up, and they had a CNN panel, and I've got the clip here somewhere of the CNN panel where they're talking about undecided vote. Oh, here's the undecided voters panel. This is what they said later.
One of you said they've made up their mind. Ryan, who are you going to vote for, and what kind of solidified that opinion?
Pause for just a moment. They were undecided. Here, let's see.
Voting for Kamala Harris.
No. We've raised $50 towards the $60 goal. Thank you, Robbie Theraman. Robbie says that Vance said I was wrong. The only other politician I've heard say that was Austin. Respect. I thank you. Augie got my nickname in there, says, what's up with the eyeliner? I've actually known a few people in my life that had natural, kind of black, eyeliner in a sense. But let's continue this clip here because this little nerd here was definitely not undecided before he was chosen to come and sit on the CNN panel, right? Please. Here he is. Here's the undecided vote.
I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. One of the stark sort of aspects of that debate that really stuck with me was when they were talking about January 6th and how Mike Pence certified the election, and they were wondering if J.D. Vance would certify the election should Trump lose. And, J.D. Vance didn't really...
He looks like Shaggy, says Heartland Okie. Heartland, you're going to be the next show on the For Liberty Network. You keep cracking up jokes like that, man.
It was a definitive answer, and I'm disappointed in that fact. And I don't think that I can trust someone, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
You can't trust someone with your vote. Oh, so it's January 6th. He was totally undecided before they sat down. Oh, okay. So you're going to trust someone. You wouldn't trust someone with your vote if they didn't respect your vote, right, kid? Okay. Well, listen to this.
You can run the best campaign. Said they've made up their mind.
You can even become
Ryan,
the nominee.
Who are you going to vote for?
Hold on, pause. Why is that playing again? Here we go.
And you can have the election stolen from you.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's
what
real
I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate?
Oh, they didn't respect your vote. You can't vote for somebody who didn't respect your vote. Really? So you don't think that J.D. Vance and Trump respect your vote? But here's 24 minutes straight of Democrats denying election results.
Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president or elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Commie gobbledygook. Norm Macdonald shirts available over at forlibertyshop.com. Check them out. You guys liking that new transition? Oh, yes. So the undecided voter, if they won't respect your vote, then he can't vote for him. Well, I guess he's not voting for Kamala Harris. Yeah, they didn't respect your vote in 2016. These guys are so full of poop that their eyes are turning brown.
There is no doubt in my mind, however Governor Walz did in terms of sincerity, that Vance won this debate.
Does Governor Walz? No.
They were talking at one point, Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right, and the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
But at the beginning, the two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy, Harris has a big deficit on immigration, and Republicans were happy tonight and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
It's the audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. The audacity is that someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right? I mean, they should have just, this is a debate. This may be the only chance people have to see the difference.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I'm an undecided voter. Yeah, I'm undecided. If they don't respect my vote.
Another interesting little exchange regarding the rights of freedom of speech, which Tim Walz doesn't seem to quite understand. Take a listen to this.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But
thank you, Frank and Beans, for getting us over that bonus content line. $60. Donna makes me holla, honey boo boo. Thank you, Frank and Beans. Says Harris has a big deficit on common sense. Amen, brother.
You guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself,
please don't call the United States a democracy, J.D. Vance.
Have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject.
Please stop with the democracy, JD.
Censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yes, you can.
That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah.
Oh, he does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you. We're completely unbiased moderators. Completely unbiased. So, fascinating little bit of history, and I'm glad that we've got Judge Andrew Napolitano coming on in 15 minutes to talk about free speech and what the test is. And just FYI, it's not fire in a crowded theater. In 1969, a Supreme Court decision overturned that and says that it is imminent danger, I believe is the phrase. But I'm forgetting right off the top of my head. It's still a little bit early, and I haven't got a full belly of Founding Flavors coffee just yet. So thank God I've got a judge and a lawyer coming on in 15 minutes to explain to us what the new test is when it comes to freedom of speech. Hint, it's not fire in a crowded theater. I wish that J.D. Vance would stop saying American democracy and start saying American republic. I think everybody listening would agree. Because you're just giving in to the Democrats when they are doing things like pushing. The reason why you shouldn't do that is because I think words do mean something to an extent, right? To a large extent. Sometimes, certain people are like the well actually guy. And trust me, I get people who well actually me when I talk about democracy in the United States all the time. And it can be frustrating. It can be annoying because there are democratic aspects to the American Republic. But we don't want to give in to the left too much because they want to abolish the Electoral College. They want the United States to be a direct democracy. And that's why the progressives passed the 17th Amendment in 1913 in the dead of night during the Christmas session. Same Christmas session that they passed the income tax. 1913 was a very bad year, a very good Christmas for the banksters. But we could talk about the Federal Reserve at 8:30 when we have Jack Lloyd coming on the show to talk about their new and the Fed music video. And I want to talk to him a little bit about how the movement against global central banks is going, and the liberty movement specifically here in the United States. Jack has a very interesting take on that. He's been very brave in taking on some of the bigger movement leaders of the liberty movement here in the United States, who he has quarreled with regarding the lack of moral clarity, I think, on their opponents' parts, but we'll discuss that in more detail. If I'm being cryptic, it's because it's just kind of a dense topic, and I don't want to get too in the weeds here I want to stick to the topic of the debate, because I know that's why you're here on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us here. And it is my show, so I do rant and sometimes go off topic. I hope that you will forgive me. It looks like we're number 2 over on X.com so far from what I can see. Thank you for that. I believe. Sometimes the Bitcoin guys come in, or like Axios turns on, and then we're screwed. So we're like number 2 right behind Florida's Voice. Actually, I think I can show you up on the screen. No, I cannot. But beautiful day in the neighborhood, streaming live from Jefferson City, Missouri. I like this meme that Donald Trump posted last night on Truth Social saying, Barack Obama saying, I need a VP dumber than me. Joe Biden, I need a VP dumber than me. Kamala Harris, I need a VP dumber than me. Tim Walz. Helping Freedom says, there's nothing like waking up with AP in your cup, a coffee, not actual pee. Yes. You don't want to wake up with pee in your cup. How's the debate going? Brandon Herrera, the AK guy, says.
Senator, thank you.
Asks.
Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach.
Okay, pause. So I was friends with school shooters. I'm guessing that he misspoke when he said that. Maybe he's serious. Maybe he meant something else. I know I shouldn't give people the benefit of the doubt, but I'm guessing that when he meant in context there was he was suggesting that he was the victims of school shooters. If you've never done a presidential debate, and how many of us have? It's easy to misspeak, and when your mind is racing.
Gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice.
Senator, thank you. Governor.
I'm the age where my SIG 365 is in my waistband because I will waste your ass if you try and mess with me, boy. Shotgun in your vehicle? What good is that? Waste your ass. Bangers from Black Twitter tonight. Enjoy. This N-word Vance just got Tim Walz to tell the world his balls don't work, man. Guantanamo Bay couldn't get that out of me. Oh, that's funny. That N-word Tim Walz built like a lesbian. Oh my God, that's good. This is from Black Twitter. Tim Walz reminds me of my middle school English teacher that would have a mental breakdown whenever a black kid would say N-word. He killed himself when the police were called to his house. Oh, my God. Black Twitter goes hard. Tim Walz is effing retarded, this N-word said. Why are we stigmatized mental health? Sometimes it's just the guns. Bro, F this dude. Thank you, Black Twitter. Tim Walz say, how is it fair that Tim Walz tweeted, how is it fair you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal taxes in the last 15 years? Black Twitter asking, yo, how does this N-word have his phone? Yeah, because he was debating. It was live. Another black person says, nah, N-word, don't come on here pretending you shit talking life after you got done like that by JD on national TV. Ooh. Another one says that this N-word Tim Walz looks like a fat Biden. That's a good one. Tim Walz says they don't got mass shootings in Finland. At first, I thought that N-word had a point, but low key, it just feels racist. Ooh. They don't have mass shootings in Finland. What else do they not have in Finland? Black people. That's what the black person said. That's what they were saying here. Tim Walz is a gay nigga, says Peach Flavor. I had to say it. It just wouldn't have the same impact. Tim Walz says he learned him how governor in China, real N-words at ABC. I don't know why that's the best one, the funniest one. It doesn't make sense. Are you enjoying the Wake Up America show? How about those beautiful transitions? Those beautiful pink transitions from one to another when you get to see me go from one scene to another. Watch this. Here we go. Isn't it the best? Every day we stray further from God's light, but the bisexual lighting on the Wake Up America show will always be here. The lighting is bisexual. We've got Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us in a little less than 10 minutes. I want to talk to him about what Tim Walz said about the free speech test, the test for free speech. Is it fire in a crowded theater? But before we do, here's a random clip about how you should ask a trans person the gender of their pet and what to say if they respond. Watch and listen.
Ask a trans person the gender of their pet, and then ask them how they can tell.
Ask a trans person the gender of their pet. So this is the experiment. And then ask them how they can tell. Watch.
Ask a trans person the gender of their pet, and then ask them how they can tell.
Girl. Because of her parts. She had ovaries.
Is your cat a boy or a girl? It's a girl. How can you tell? Brain working because of her parts. She has ovaries. Ideology distracting. Ideology disgusting. Do you like the Wake Up America show? Are you having a good time? Click that like button then and subscribe to our channel by clicking the follow button underneath the Rumble chat. Now, I know we've got people watching us over on YouTubes and X.com this morning, and I want to say hi to you guys. Somebody was extremely generous over on YouTube. I don't know who it was, but they gave me like $50 yesterday. And if you're here again today, I just want to say thank you, right? I'm not ignoring you guys. It's just that I get demonetized on YouTube, and it's scary for me to put my financial future into the hands of people like whoever runs the evil overlords that run Google and YouTube these days. So I decided to trust my own and to stake my fortunes at rumble.com/AP for Liberty. And now I'm putting my full faith and credit into Rumble and Locals by launching a new Liberty network on Locals at forlibernetwork.com. That's right. 3 shows, not just mine anymore. We're going to lift up voices of more liberty lovers and make some people famous. Why not? It'll be fun, especially if they're advocating the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty. And if we believe in the idea of an American republic, the sovereignty of the individual, then, well, I guess we're friends, right? And you should hang out with us more. My show, the Wake Up America show, is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central, and it is the hub through which everything revolves. But 2 brand new shows will appear in your timeline. I'm prognosticating your future. I see you opening your calendar and you're writing down the dates, October 15th and 17th on your calendar. From 7 to 9 p.m. and from 9 to 11, you will be, well, it's Central Time. So 7 to 9 Central Time, 9 to 11 Central Time. You will be watching Culturama on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9. And on Thursdays from 9 to 11 p.m., you will sit around and turn on Liberty Tonight. I see this in your future. Yes. Ooh. The new shows on the 4 Liberty Network, so make sure that you're following them over at rumble.com or over at 4libertynetwork.com. That's the number 4libertynetwork.com. I hope that you guys will enjoy the brand new shows and that you guys will come back and hang out with us after the break when Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us live. Don't go away, guys. We've got lots more great content to go. We're going to talk about the Tim Walz, J.D. Vance debate. I've got the bonus content for you since you guys unlocked it. Thank you. You're incredible. We'll be right back with Judge Napolitano to react to the debate and talk about the Eric Adams situation, the mayor of New York, under federal indictment on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
Today's bonus content. Let's look at the fact of how Washington, D.C. worsened Hurricane Helene's destruction. At least 119 people have died as a result of Hurricane Helene, reports CNN. While FEMA is busy aiding survivors, its national flood insurance program perversely incentivizes Americans to live in high-risk areas. People choose to remain in flood-prone areas for various reasons, such as proximity to family, work, and school. Uprooting oneself can be painful, making the option to stay and take on risk understandable. However, living in these areas involves considerable risk. According to FEMA, the average flood insurance claim in 2018 was $40,000, a risk that should be borne by the risk taker. The Biden-Harris administration approved an additional $715 million for FEMA's flood mitigation assistance program in advance of Hurricane Helene. FMAP, part of NFIP, makes up 15.5% of FEMA's budget and provides subsidized flood insurance to homeowners. FEMA acknowledges the folly of providing insurance at below market rates, but the practice continues. Established by the National Flood Insurance Act of 1968, the Biggert-Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2012 was passed to reduce NFIP's debt from past hurricanes. This act removed discounts for some policyholders to more accurately reflect expected flood losses. These reforms were actuarially sound but unpopular and were overturned 2 years later. The Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act of 2014 restored pre-Biggert-Waters rates and capped annual premium increases for homes. Congress instituted effective price ceilings to encourage participation in NFIP, but FEMA's affordability framework acknowledges that market rate insurance is a key indicator of risk. The 2018 framework admits that affordability programs create perverse incentives. These incentives encourage lower-income households to purchase properties in very risky areas. Approximately 13 million homeowners live in special flood hazard areas, where there's at least a 1% annual risk of flooding. NFIP deems 12% of these homeowners to have dangerously high PIDI ratios. Even with mandatory NFIP enrollment in SFHAs, the average policyholder cost for a single-family home is $1,098, double the cost outside SFHAs. Without NFIP subsidies, insurance rates would rise and become unaffordable for some homeowners. High insurance rates are a critical feature of the market, discouraging risky behavior and indicating the true cost of risk. More than 2 million homes and businesses lacked power as of Monday morning, according to the Weather Channel. About 3,000 people were housed in shelters across 5 states, reports the New York Times. Artificially lowering insurance rates deprives homeowners of crucial information about the risks of devastation and displacement. FEMA's affordability framework argues that good public policy should balance increased flood insurance take-up with program costs. This balancing act is straightforward. The federal government must stop subsidizing NFIP to let partnered insurance companies set risk-reflective rates. Doing so would better inform homeowners of the true risks of extreme weather events like Hurricane Helene.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist. Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I hope you're as excited as I am about the launch of the 2 new shows coming October 15th and 17th. We have Culturama featuring Marilyn Monroe with a master's degree, Daniela Pensack. You know her from our Thirsty Thursday segments. And then, of course, the boys of Liberty Tonight, a new libertarian-themed Tonight Show style program, a podcast, live show, 9 to 11 p.m. These 2 boys will never push any mandatory jabs for you. You're not going to see any dancing vaccines on the Liberty Tonight Show here, coming Thursday, starting October 17th on the 4 Liberty Network. Thank you to everyone who's helped to make it happen, including my next guest, who, without his mentorship, I would not be the man I am today. I was once called the right side of his brain, you know. Judge Andrew Napolitano is the host of the wildly successful Judging Freedom podcast with 400,000 views of his podcast yesterday. He might be one of the most relevant voices in right-wing and libertarian circles today. Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us live. Good morning. Pleasure to see your handsome face.
You're very kind, Austin. Thank you again for the generous introduction. Congratulations on the expansion of your family and the expansion of your professional work at the same time.
Thank you, Judge. The fight for liberty has to continue on beyond our own lifetimes. You know, I think there was an old phrase that said that civilization thrives when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in. And you planted seeds in my mind that I will then turn around and use to grow more fruit of liberty. And hopefully in the future, the American Republic can be restored along the lines of the founding fathers and Jeffersonian ideals like you and I adhere to, not progressive ideals, not leftist ideals, not socialist ideals, not communist ideals, not right-wing progressive, Republican progressive, not Rooseveltian, not Wilsonian, but Jeffersonian and Neapolitan, shall we say, ideals.
Neapolitan.
Neapolitan.
Like the ice cream, right?
Judge Napolitano, last night, the VPs squared off against one another, and some people were saying they wish that we could see this kind of cordial behavior between the two presidential candidates. Nevertheless, it was, I thought, in terms of style, J.D. Vance's, in terms of relatableness, maybe Governor Walz's. But in one moment, I think it encapsulated a major misunderstanding of the question of free speech, of which you and I discuss quite frequently on the show. I'd like to play a clip for you, Judge, from the debate last night and get your response to it. Here we go.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator.
Judge, your response.
Yeah, well, criticizing the policies of the government is the right of every American. It doesn't come from the First Amendment. It comes from our humanity. It's a quintessential natural right. The First Amendment is supposed to restrain the government from interfering with it. Governor Walz's understanding of shouting fire in a crowded theater is a common misunderstanding of the First Amendment, embraced all across the ideological spectrum. I've even heard federal judges use it. The First Amendment only restrains the government. Unless the theater is owned by the government, very unusual, though there are a few, then the First Amendment doesn't come into play. If the landowner says you can shout fire, then the landowner becomes responsible for the consequences of shouting fire. But using that as an example is a slippery slope to suggest that there are areas of free speech that the government can interfere with. If Governor Walz had been up on it, he would have said, oh, Senator Vance, Donald Trump wants to amend the First Amendment because he wants Congress to be able to outlaw flag burning, not your neighbor's flag, not the government's flag, but your own flag. And Justice Scalia has written that the flag stands for the right to burn and destroy it. But Trump wants to amend the First Amendment. So you don't know what you're talking about. That's what my response would have been to Vance. Then I would have said he also wants to amend the Fifth Amendment, which requires due process. since 2 days ago, he said if the police catch a criminal in the act, they should be able to administer whatever punishment they want right then and there without a trial. This is our return to the Middle Ages. So the assaults on the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Bill of Rights in general are rampant, dangerous, and must be called out at every turn, no matter from whom they come.
Judge, one of the things, thank you for that, Judge. Let's hit the applause button. Now you can hear the applause. And let's consider the language that J.D. Vance used, Judge. And I'd like to get your advice on something on how to speak about our American republic, because specifically J.D. Vance said our democracy and America as a democracy, which you and I know is a misnomer. It's a federal republic with democratic aspects. And my concern is that as we have allowed the word liberal, for example, to mean something completely different from what it is, when you give in to the language that the left uses, we get these sort of, the disequilibrium in our vocabulary that causes confusion amongst the populace. So I wonder, how would you judge, in your advice, to how to speak about the American Republic with the fact that there are democratic aspects, and your thoughts on, giving into the left of the idea of America as a democracy? What's the best way to sort of rebut an argument like that, maybe without being overly annoying, but in a convincing way? How would you convince someone? Maybe you're taking the stand, or you're a lawyer arguing a case about how to sort of combat the left's view of the United States as a democracy, considering it has democratic aspects. How would you formulate an opinion on that?
I would annoy everybody by saying we're not a republic, we're an empire. We have 875 foreign military installations and spend more money on defense than the next 10 countries combined, even though China has a bigger navy and Russia has a bigger army. How can that be? Because we are feeding the military industrial complex. We fight wars against enemies that pose no threat to us. We support other countries with which we don't have any alliances at all, because the representatives of the other countries, I'm speaking of Israel, are so influential in the donating to and funding of American political campaigns. And I would remind everybody that democracy is not just one person, one vote. It's the concept that our rights belong to our humanity, and those rights are not subject to a vote. So if all the world but one, I'm paraphrasing John Stuart Mill, were of one opinion, the world would have no more right to silence the one than he, if he had the power, would have the right to silence the world. That's the problem with democracy today, is people think they can vote themselves money, taking it from others, and that they can take away liberty by voting for it. Just because Congress votes for something does not make it moral. It may make it lawful, but it doesn't make it moral. So I'm kind of in a small minority with you, I believe, of Rothbardian libertarians who believe that government is essentially the negation of liberty and is the destroyer of freedom. For example, if abortion is murder, yesterday I ran a clip to commemorate his 100th birthday of Jimmy Carter. Could you imagine a Democratic candidate for president saying this today? I think abortion is murder. But we ran a clip of him saying that when he was running for the Democratic nomination in 76. If abortion is murder, then it can't be voted on, because the right to live is a natural right. It's not subject to majoritarian impulses any more than free speech can be silenced by the majority. So I fear runaway democracy, or I fear people who believe that they can vote themselves a share of other people's wealth. That's why we have to have checks on runaway democracy. And that check is called natural rights. I have a natural right to live. I have a natural right to speak, to defend myself, to own my property and keep everybody off of it, even the government. And that includes my bank account.
Amen. Judge Napolitano. That's why we bring him on every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Give us those spicy, hot freedom takes. Oh, Josh, there's so many different ways that I could take this conversation, because my selfish desire is to ask you a question like, who would you lay the blame for, most of the blame for the creation of the institution of America as an empire? And I'd like to talk to you about, was it Theodore or was it Woodrow, and the war with Mexico or with Spain, and I know that would be good for us, but I want to stick back to something that's a little more present day for our audience, as much as I do love those conversations.
Well, the short answer to that is Abraham Lincoln, but we can spend a whole show on it.
Oh, Abraham Lincoln. That's fascinating. Okay. Yeah, I would probably choose Theodore, but yeah, I could see where Lincoln would come in. That's a good one. Judge Tim Walz last night was talking about the Second Amendment, and he said, I used to carry a shotgun in my truck. Is the Second Amendment, did the founding fathers write the Second Amendment so that we could hunt tasty deer and venison and put their trophies on the wall? Is that what the Second Amendment was written for?
No. The Second Amendment was written to protect your right to shoot at tyrants if they take over the government, and to protect your life and the life of your family and your property when the government is unable to do so. Of course, at the time that the Second Amendment was written, the government was not in the business of providing personal safety. The homeowner provided his or her own personal safety, but it absolutely was not written to protect the right to hunt. That is a canard that the Democrats like to use. You remember those pictures in 2000 of John Kerry, I guess it was 2004, of John Kerry hunting. He didn't even know how to hold the rifle. It was ridiculous and embarrassing, but some Democratic PR consultant thought it might win him votes. I don't know what Tim Walz or the vice president's personal attitude is on guns. I know they belong to a political party that since 1934 has stood steadfastly for infringing upon the right to keep and bear arms. So did Republicans, by the way, until the Heller decision written by Justice Scalia, which defined once and for all the right to keep and bear arms as a personal, individual, pre-political, comes from our humanity, pre-political right. Pre-political, another word for natural. Why didn't you say natural, Justice Scalia? Well, it sounds too Catholic. I didn't have enough votes to use the word natural, so I had to use pre-political. I asked him that in front of 2,500 people, and I just gave you his answer. It sounds too Catholic.
Let's give it up for Judge Napolitano, shall we? What a great man. And I love these stories, and that you share them with this judge.
From a man who went to mass every day of his adult life complaining it sounds too Catholic.
You've always explained so well the concept of pre-political rights, especially when you talk about free speech as the freedom of speech. And I quote you on that as much as I can, Judge. And I appreciate you for that. There's so many things I would love to ask you about this morning, and I've got so much on my mind. But briefly, before I get to the Eric Adams New York indictment story, I'd like to ask, what's your take on the dock workers strike? They threatened to shut us down, essentially extorting the American people. I mean, even if we are an American empire, Judge, I'd like to keep the free trade of goods and services flowing through our ports, and the proverbial knife to our throat, these union thugs. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, there's a right to strike. There's a right to organize. There's a right to work. There's a right not to work. I mean, these are choices that individuals make, and they suffer the consequences of them. The ship owners, the dock owners should have other people lined up to do this work. You don't want to work? Go. Goodbye. You should actually be able to fire people that don't come to work. But of course, you can't unless you're Ronald Reagan and you're running the government and you're talking about something like air traffic controllers. You can't fire people just because they went on strike. You should be able to. The labor laws in the country will bring us to ruination, just like all centralized planning of economic activity, of which the labor laws, just like minimum wage, are a species.
I actually did not. I'm surprised that that's how you took it. I mean, I know that you feel the same way when it comes to private property and all those things, but don't you sort of like I don't know, don't you like sort of loathe these union leaders, the way that they exploit tragedy happening here in the United States and to prevent the free flow of goods and services? I mean, just speaking as a personal matter, it doesn't seem right that they can blackmail the rest of us. I mean, they were given this incredible offer and they don't take it. I know you look at very, very clinically, but I mean, it's sort of morally outrageous what they do to the American people, isn't it?
I don't know that I would agree that it's morally outrageous. It's inconvenient. These things happen from time to time. When I was younger, I condemned labor unions, but as I've gotten older and I recognize you like a 40-hour week, thank the labor unions. You like a weekend, thank the labor unions. These people, by using the free market, imbued into American society things that we take for granted today. I don't support this strike. I don't even know what the strike is about. Is there a right to strike? Yes. Is there a right to fire the strikers? There should be. The government should stay the heck out of it. The government's job is to get rid of tariffs between the states, but not to tell people how to engage in interstate commerce. As I said, if the owners want to hire, I don't know how many people are on strike, but if the owners want to go out and hire people to replace them, they should be able to do so.
Judge, have you ever worked a 40-hour work week in your life?
Maybe when I was an hourly employee, when I was a student, but no, I've never worked a 40-hour work week, nor have I ever kept count of the hours I work. Like you, I work about 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
So in some ways,
most of America does work a 40-hour work week. Most of America is a descendant of being an employee subject to the rules imposed upon them by the employer, punching a clock, starting at 8 a.m, finishing at 4 p.m. That's not you or me, and that's probably not the future, but that is what brought us to where we are today.
There's just the reason I think why I have a moral outrage is that, when I read my Ayn Rand and you consider that the point of view of, oh, well, it's good that we have a 40-hour work week. And you and I have never worked a 40-hour work. I've never worked not even when I worked at a Walmart when I was like 16 years old, I always put in more for overtime and I worked it's this sort of a class war against entrepreneurs and people like ourselves where they saddle this concept of we must restrict to a 40-hour work week, it's kind of elitist, right? It's like, well, the people who, just can't fathom working more than 40 hours. It's protecting them so that they can see their lives and their family. And listen, I understand. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt's whole sort of ethos was built around this because he saw the exploited factory workers and living in their homes and the conditions of tanners inside of apartment buildings. So that was his first major push, I think, was a governor of New York or mayor of New York City. I forget which position he held in which he brought about those reforms. So I don't know. I guess it's just the Ayn Rand in me that says it's like these unions, they saddle the productive sector of society, right? They take the makers and they give it to the takers. So that's where I guess if I could explain where my moral outrage comes from, it's generated in that sort of Ayn Rand sense where it's like everything is at the expense of people who actually create the jobs.
Well, I agree with you, but again, the culprit is not the unions and the culprit is not the entrepreneurs. The culprit is the government, which interferes in that relationship. Theodore Roosevelt was the police commissioner of the city of New York, and from there he became the governor of New York. He's one of the, in my view, 4 or 5 worst presidents in American history because he saw no distinction between being governor and being president and thought he could right any wrong and regulate any behavior and tax any event and intrude upon any relationship. He was just the flip side of the coin of Woodrow Wilson.
Judge, these are fascinating conversations, and I'd like to have even more with you, but we're going to run out of time. I apologize. My timing has been a little off because of the new For Liberty Network promos and things, Judge, but I'd love to hear about your show, Judging Freedom, and your column coming every week at judgenap.com on Thursdays.
You know, a lot of people don't care about Gitmo. I do. And people should, because when the government can demonize a defendant in a criminal prosecution, and as a result of that demonization, cut corners and imbue politics into the prosecution, it's a very, very, very dangerous precedent. Without getting into a detail, my column that comes out tonight explains the continuing bizarre jurisprudential mess that Guantanamo Bay prosecutions have become, thanks to George W. Bush and Lindsey Graham and the Devil's Island that they created down there and tried to keep from American people, and then keep from American judges, and then keep from military juries. But the bottom line is, in 23 years, there has not been a single prosecution for 9/11. And now the prosecution is about to start, and the government decided it can't prosecute the case because a new team of prosecutors has concluded we can't defend torture. We had no idea how extensive the torture was. Thank you, George W. Bush. Therefore, we have to enter into a plea agreement. A plea agreement was entered into, agreed upon, signed off on, and then the Secretary of Defense ordered the military prosecutors to ask a judge to vacate the plea agreement that they initiated, that they negotiated for, that they wrote, and that they signed. That's where we are today. It's a mess. So I don't know how it's going to end up. But the reason there's been no prosecutions is because Gitmo. If these people had been put in American federal jails and tried in American federal courtrooms, their trials would have been over 20 years ago.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, the chat is saying Judge Napolitano for Attorney General, the only choice. You can read that weekly column at judgenap.com, coming out every Thursdays. I have the privilege of being able to read it a day early, and I highly recommend that you head over there and check it out, as well as his show, Judging Freedom, which is a massive runaway hit, maybe the most important voice in liberty in the United States today. Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Austin. All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Give Judge Napolitano a round of applause as he exits. Thank you, Judge. We're going to have a fascinating conversation with my next guest, who just released a brand new music video about ending the Federal Reserve System. But I want to talk to him about a few other things as well. Jack Lloyd joining us live in less than 5. Don't go away. Go to forlibertyshop.com and get yourself something real nice. It's the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. I love you.
Prices and big government? Don't be a ghost of your former self this Halloween. We've got shirts that'll keep the ghouls and the government off your back. Inflation's scarier than any haunted house, but hey, why not turn it into a costume? Or how about our spooky government shirt? Guaranteed to spook anyone who's afraid of too much power. But if you're feeling real edgy, nothing says Halloween like our Michael Myers No Lives Matter shirt. Cause when it comes to big government, we all get slashed. At forlibertyshop.com, we believe in freedom, not fear. So grab your libertarian Halloween gear before the government takes an extra bite out of your wallet. Or your candy. forlibertyshop.com. Let's make Halloween tax-free.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at PHOlosopher.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Today's bonus content. Let's look at the fact of how Washington, D.C. worsened Hurricane Helene's destruction. At least 119 people have died as a result of Hurricane Helene, reports CNN. While FEMA is busy aiding survivors, its national flood insurance program perversely incentivizes Americans to live in high-risk areas. People choose to remain in flood-prone areas for various reasons, such as proximity to family, work, and school. Uprooting oneself can be painful, making the option to stay and take on risk understandable. However, living in these areas involves considerable risk. According to FEMA, the average flood insurance claim in 2018 was $40,000, a risk that should be borne by the risk taker. The Biden-Harris administration approved an additional $715 million for FEMA's flood mitigation assistance program in advance of Hurricane Helene. FMAP, part of NFIP, makes up 15.5% of FEMA's budget and provides subsidized flood insurance to homeowners. FEMA acknowledges the folly of providing insurance at below market rates, but the practice continues. Established by the National Flood Insurance Act of 1968, the Biggert-Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2012 was passed to reduce NFIP's debt from past hurricanes. This act removed discounts for some policyholders to more accurately reflect expected flood losses. These reforms were actuarially sound but unpopular and were overturned 2 years later. The Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act of 2014 restored pre-Biggert-Waters rates and capped annual premium increases for homes. Congress instituted effective price ceilings to encourage participation in NFIP, but FEMA's affordability framework acknowledges that market rate insurance is a key indicator of risk. The 2018 framework admits that affordability programs create perverse incentives. These incentives encourage lower-income households to purchase properties in very risky areas. Approximately 13 million homeowners live in special flood hazard areas, where there's at least a 1% annual risk of flooding. NFIP deems 12% of these homeowners to have dangerously high PID ratios. Even with mandatory NFIP enrollment in SFHAs, the average policyholder cost for a single-family home is $1,098, double the cost outside SFHAs. Without NFIP subsidies, insurance rates would rise and become unaffordable for some homeowners. High insurance rates are a critical feature of the market, discouraging risky behavior and indicating the true cost of risk. More than 2 million homes and businesses lacked power as of Monday morning, according to the Weather Channel. About 3,000 people were housed in shelters across 5 states, reports the New York Times. Artificially lowering insurance rates deprives homeowners of crucial information about the risks of devastation and displacement. FEMA's affordability framework argues that good public policy should balance increased flood insurance take-up with program costs. This balancing act is straightforward. The federal government must stop subsidizing NFIP to let partnered insurance companies set risk-reflective rates. Doing so would better inform homeowners of the true risks of extreme weather events like Hurricane Helene.
The creature from Jekyll Island. It's time to get out of debt. I need these feds out of my
Aldrich, Warburg, Davis, Smith, Vander Lip, and Andrew co-conspired, viciously enslaved me and you. 1910 was the year of evil actor actions, banking on a Fed Reserve monetary coup. They legislated secretly in perfect fascist fashion to cover their intentions of pillaging the masses.
I like it. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. This would be a lot freer country if we didn't have a central bank. I'm just saying. But people aren't just going to listen to me blab about it all the time. You got to get out there and you got to affect culture. You got to make music videos like this so more people can find out the amazing message of economic freedom and personal liberty that's associated with libertarianism, voluntarism, agorism, anarcho-capitalism, but no Javier Milei. No Javier Milei, not a real libertarian, not allowed at this table, I'll tell you about. Just kidding. He's the only real libertarian in my mind. Not a real libertarian joining us live right now from that music video. We're looking like a werewolf or a wolf man, Jack Lloyd, for his second time on the show. Good morning, Jack. How are you doing, brother? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Austin. I'm doing very well, despite all the craziness out in the world and the storms and everything that's been going on. So,
well, I hope. Were you in the path of the storm? Or are you guys safe?
Yeah, we made it out all right. We did get some pretty strong gusts. We lost one tree and a gate blew off, but we're otherwise okay.
Yeah, so. you got lucky compared to a lot of people, Jack. And I'm glad that you guys are safe. Hey, congrats on the launch of your new End the Fed official music video. Looks like you guys put a lot of work into that. What was going on with the hair? Was that like were you the creature? Is that what that is? The creature from Jekyll Island?
Well, I mean, we're trying to do something a little different and kind of do a little bit of 80s retro, but mix it with modern. So, we just like having fun with our costumes and get people excited with kind of fun and interesting to watch. So
you and the PHOlosopher did a fantastic job on that one. I know how much work goes in to doing things like this. So for most people, when they watch videos like these passively, they're like, just okay, 2 minutes, I'll watch it. They're like, oh, it's fun. And I'm like, you have no idea how hard people have to work to make all those things happen. So a lot of time and a lot of computing power and hours to make it happen. So kudos to you, man, for putting the effort.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. It is difficult. We had to fly out to DC. We had to do lots of arrangement when it came to costuming and locations and, travel, lighting, post editing and things like that. So it's a pretty big endeavor.
I love this. I love this clip where the space aliens blow up the Federal Reserve, which is rather violent. But still, my idea was that we should put a gun range and we should just end the Fed and then put it like a civilian gun range, with a reasonable price. But congrats on the release of your music video. And there's a pointed message there, Jack, and one that I definitely want to get to. But, only a certain amount of people are allowed to be libertarians, right? Gatekeeping is important, right? Because I kid you not, Jack, in 2013, I did an interview with John Bolton, Ambassador John Bolton, and he was convincing me for like a half an hour to an hour conversation that he was a libertarian. And I found that to be laughable, right? So maybe that's a bridge too far. But if I'm playing devil's advocate, he actually made some good points, and I listened to people who I disagree with on things, and I would encourage more people to do that. I got chastised by our mutual friend Dave Smith for having friends that were neocons and listening to them and hearing their points of views on things, right? And for broadening my perspective. But the tent is not big enough for Javier Milei, says Hans Hermann Hoppe and Stephen Kinsella. And if Stephen Kinsella and Hans Hermann Hoppe, I mean, author of The Democracy, the God That Failed, if they say Javier Milei is not a real libertarian, I guess he's not, right? I mean, when we hear Javier Milei, he sucks, right? He's the worst.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. I love Kinsella. He, personally, of course, I'm friends with him. I think that it's kind of a mistake here in the analysis that's lost in the bigger picture. And it's this kind of imputation that Milei is a dictator and that he controls the entirety of the government. And I think it's a common framing error that people have. They know in their own local political bodies that there's contentions and limitations as to what someone can do because there's separation of powers technically still, and there's going to be different factions of people fighting over what they get. And Milei, from the beginning, tried his best to cut as much as he could right off the bat, but he was frustrated by the legislature. The Supreme Court struck down some of his reforms. And so he had to actually regroup and figure out ways to negotiate with others and to put pressure on other groups and governors and things like that in order to get things moved forward. So I think it's a real shame that that type of analysis is left out for him. Nobody's sitting there and saying, oh, he actually did really try to cut the government really far right off the bat and yet was struck down, literally struck down by the Supreme Court and pushed against by the legislature. So I think that's kind of sad that wasn't even brought up. That it's like as if they just ignore it and pretend that he can just do anything and he pulls all the strings of every branch.
We're speaking to Jack V. Lloyd right now about Javier Milei, about real libertarianism. I like to analyze Javier Milei's Argentina as the model of how economies can grow if they get their leaders out of the way. Javier Milei's approach has been to deregulate the economy, and the rental market has thrived. Inflation has dropped. Standards of living are increasing. Supplies are increasing, where they are looking at dropping tariffs and allowing more imports. The people who can't see that, I feel like, Jack, they don't want to see it because they have a bone to pick with Javier Milei, not just because they misunderstand his how he's used the very specific political power he has, which is different from the model of the American executive. And we could talk about how the American executive has gotten all wild and crazy later. But it's not just some simple misunderstanding about him misusing his power, Jack. I think it's a deliberate misunderstanding because they don't like some of the other positions that he takes as a, shall we say, anarchist in the streets, minarchist in the sheets kind of a guy when it comes to things like foreign policy. Are you kind of like picking up on the scent of the doobie I'm rolling right now? Are you smelling what I'm smoking?
Well, when it comes to Milei, a lot of people are going to nitpick what he does on a global scale in terms of his positions because they're afraid of him supporting globalist policies in terms of, World War and things like that. I would say there, it seems kind of strange to me because fundamentally, Milei aligns himself with certain types of groups that he thinks are safer for the Argentine economy in terms of being friendly with. He's certainly more friendly to Western governments than to, you could say, BRICS, through Russia and China, things like that. He and word is, more friendly to groups like NATO, which I don't believe in NATO personally, but those things are not him actually joining in a way that's for militarism or for the purpose of expanding control over Argentinians. He's simply saying, hey, I want to do business. I want to open up the economy as much as possible. And I just want to be a part of what is this defense structure and, not sending troops to a bunch of different countries. We're just saying, hey, don't attack us, right? We're not fighting you guys. We're not here trying to disrupt things on that side, which I don't know. It seems like the same people who would say the CIA would assassinate people and overturn different types of leaders in South America, which is pretty clear, would empathize with that idea that, hey, maybe Javier Milei just doesn't want to be killed in his first term, and he's just like, hey, I'm not doing anything with you guys that's going to be frustrating those things. I'm just kind of chilling here, taking care of Argentina, please don't kill me. That kind of thing. So I think that's probably what's most realistic, is that Milei's sympathies are there, and he's just taking I'm going to do business with this side of the world kind of thing, and he wants to do business with everybody. He wants to open up the entire economy, as he's spoken about. But I think that he is making it clear that he doesn't wish to have any conflict or any type of CIA coups taking place as he's trying to reform the economy.
See, the problem as I see it, Jack, is that we're kind of looking at this myopically through our lens of American libertarianism, and American libertarianism is really very unique in the world. It has in its DNA, baked into its DNA, the overlap that it's had with communist foreign policy. If you take the view of the United States as an empire, as an evil empire, going around the world, assassinating leaders at will, acting very much as third world dictators do in the open, like when you see how Kim Jong-il had his brother assassinated by those two women in an airport, for example. And if you look at the United States as the greatest Satan in the world, it makes sense how many of my ANCAP friends come to the same conclusions that communists do in regards to American foreign policy, looking at police officers ultimately as pigs, right? But or they're all the same, right? And kill them all, and they're all porkers. But the only problem is, being a minarchist in this libertarian movement, and I guess to a certain extent a minority within the American libertarian movement, but not a minority when it comes to the rest of the world, right? I've never heard articulated a foreign policy from an anarcho-capitalist that sounded to me like it actually provided for some kind of a common defense. I mean, it's all just, well, America's the great evil, and we're the great Satan. Osama bin Laden was right about everything. And by the way, Iran, they're really great guys. Hezbollah, Hamas, wonderful people, just doing everything they can to fight against the evil Netanyahu. And Putin is a wonderful guy, despite the fact he's in KGB and probably slit more throats than you and I would ever care to know. Wonderful guy, just fighting for, in the Euromaidan and to protect against the Nazi Azov battalions and all this bullshit that I've listened to for the last 20 years, Jack. And I'm supposed to pretend that Javier Milei is not a real libertarian because he doesn't buy into, well, let's just call it the reckless faggotry of American voluntarism, libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism that's presented by many of these just morally bankrupt people who claim that they are the kings and queens of libertarianism when really they're just sitting on top of turd piles here in the United States. And people like Javier Milei are out there actually taking the voluntarist anarchist principles, bringing them into reality. I mean, Javier Milei has words. They have like the Libertad Avanza Party, which just had a huge bash down there, by the way, because they got recognized as a national party. They look at us and they laugh. They're clowning us. They're laughing at us, Jack. And I know that you don't buy into like all of that brainwashing, like the cult, if you will, right? And I know that you probably find some of my words ring true. Some of them probably sting, right? Maybe it's a little bit of a tongue lashing for people that you know. And I have lots of friends that are anarchists and voluntarists. But I mean, shut the fuck up if you are going to tell me that Javier Milei is not a real libertarian. Shut the fuck up. Not you, the royal you, right, of anarcho-capitalists. Like, I don't, like, I'm not going to be lectured to by children, right, about foreign policy, or like your foreign policy is don't do anything in the American empire is evil, man. Like, go smoke a joint and sit in the corner. John Bolton like knows more about libertarianism than these people, and I know because I've interviewed him about it. Jack, how would you respond to my severe and brutal beatdown there? Not of you, well, but
yeah, I would say I think the balance that needs to be brought with these situations is that it's easy to, when you're, at home and you're more privy to what's going on with the evils of the United States and the history. It's more easy to demonize the totality of the United States and empire building, but then to lose sight that this is normal around the entire world. And I think that when you lose sight of those comparatives, that's when you get into these weird situations where your analysis only becomes, well, everything is just reaction to the US empire and blowback. And that's definitely where I would diverge from a lot of these people. And I would agree with you, of course, Putin is evil and he does want empire. When they say, oh, it's just NATO, I said, yes, that's his rationalization for being provoked. And I think that's wrong. But to suggest that therefore, he doesn't have his own ambitions, and that he went from having limited, terms for president to make it where he could stay in there forever, it's just meaningless, and all his, opponents disappearing. I mean, to look at that and say, yeah, he doesn't want anything bigger is really silly. So I think that it should be, natural for people to think about it economically with incentives of political power. The people who are in power, different governments, have their own interests for growing their power, and they have their own secret spying programs and torture camps, and they have dissidents being suppressed.
And that's an anti-war opinion, Jack. That is an anti-war opinion, and you're right to feel that way, and I respect you for that. And you know what? I think I'm not anti-war anymore. If I was, I think it was because I was ignorant as to an understanding of the world of which we live in, which I think Javier Milei understands quite clearly. This is a man, here we just got done getting lectured to by many of people that you and I well know about the very special evil of Winston Churchill. The very special evil of Winston Churchill as the great villain of World War II. But please, I know that with people who are listening understand quite clearly, my audience will understand that is quite clearly bullshit. However, we don't need to debate the finer points of the Boer Wars of the late 1800s in South Africa and what he thought of the black men and whether he was a racist or not. Let's talk about the moral clarity of Javier Milei when he talks about someone like Margaret Thatcher. And as someone who has been to the IEA, which was his think tank that was affiliated with him in London, and gotten the tour of Westminster and saw where Margaret Thatcher walked and read her books, and been to Hillsdale College and pondered Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher at their statues, and at the Mises Library there at Hillsdale. I've considered these things very deeply. Javier Milei, his country has been at war with the UK. They still have a problem with the Falklands in regards to who is the rightful owner of the Falklands Islands. And Margaret Thatcher warred with Argentina to protect their interests because of the UK's interest in claiming a piece of Antarctica. We all know this situation. Javier Milei, as a nationalist and someone who wants to protect Argentine interests, could therefore be very hostile to Margaret Thatcher, right, in a sort of a brutish way of this my nation, right or wrong. No, instead, he looks across international lines, Jack, sees that Margaret Thatcher turned the United Kingdom around from its socialist bent. It's, our real common enemies, the socialists, the real, not real libertarians, Jack, right? And praises Margaret Thatcher and has no reason to, would only take a hit in saying it. It shows to me that this whole, Winston Churchill was the great evil, Margaret Thatcher, milk snatcher, right? That like American libertarianism, what really distinguishes it from communists, right? Like what really makes American libertarians different than American communists, other than, some quibbles on economics here or there. But I mean, like morally, right? Our view on people and our view on history, it just seems like there's a very powerful overlap. And I don't want to get into guilt by association or anything, Jack, but I think, can you see like the picture that I'm painting? Why I identify more with this Javier Milei libertarian nationalism, more Vivek Ramaswamy style libertarianism, rather than this pussy-tarianism of anti-war comm and Hans Hermann Hoppe and the autistic jack-off sessions that regularly occur online by American voluntarists? I mean, can you see why I kind of like remove myself from these camps and identify more with Javier Milei than with American libertarianism?
Well, I think the crossover that you speak to, and we talked a little bit about this last time, is that the communist bent, especially the American left, they're very anti-colonial, anti-imposition of Western values, around the world kind of mindset there. So when it comes to their critiques, everything that they're going to be speaking about would dovetail into those who have their own critiques from the libertarian side of American empire and so on and so forth. I just tend to find there's a lot of hypocrisies there, though, when people try to dive into the issues, whether it's on Javier Milei or in Israel, because on one hand, they'll join with these people and say, oh, yes, the British Empire is wrong and evil, and that was terrible for different peoples. And of course, the great, I think it's the Balfour Declaration in Africa, splitting that up with the different European countries, that was a wrong, and so on and so forth. But then when it comes to saying, okay, well then fighting off British Empire, like the United States here, what that was, and it became from the American colonies, and Israel fighting off British Empire, and Javier Milei potentially saying to the British Empire, hey, chop, chop, your time's done here in the Balkans, right? That suddenly is a problem. So it's a very difficult balance, I think, for a lot of people to kind of weigh, to both criticize the empire, the Western empires, which again, there's valid things there, but
Absolutely.
then to say, okay, but now that you can't do that anymore. So, it's tough for them to
Eric
manage.
Wilson live in the chat says, I thought the reason for debating ANCAP stuff is that you're supposed to put it into practice. You want to see it in practice. If it's just meant to stay a discussion, not action, what was the point? Good point by Eric Wilson live. Now, I want to be kind to my guest, Jack, and take up too much of your time. Do you have maybe another 10 minutes to chat and we could go into overtime? If not,
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Jack, very much. Let me reset. Bonus content for the Wake Up America show fans and listeners. Thanks. Make sure you click that like button and follow the channel. If you get to stick around with us for an extra 10 minutes, Jack is being very generous as I sort of tongue lash his entire worldview and philosophy stuff. Jack, not yours, of course, but I think that that you have a moral clarity that is lacking, and it's because of your identity of you're able to identify like the true evil rather than if you're going to pick sides, pick the side of evil. It makes no sense, right? It's kind of like, all right, I would understand neutrality to a certain extent, but then also I also don't understand neutrality to a certain. I pick sides. Right. So I think it's, somebody really explained this to me well, and it sort of changed my view of how I look at myself as an anti-war person, because I do like the idea of don't tread on me and, doing to others as you would have them doing to you, and golden rule and things like that. And the nap to me sounds good in theory, but I think in practicality it has a lot of problems. But I choose sides, right? Because if I'm involved in a war, this war affects me, then I think I'm going to have to not be neutral. I think when you look at, for example, the people in the American Revolution, a third of the people fought the revolution, a third of the people fought against the revolution and were loyalists, and then a third of the people just didn't care and didn't give a shit, right? In the Bible, I think God talks about, if you are lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. I don't see Hamas and Israel as morally the same, right? I mean, even if you're neutral on the conflict to the extent that, you don't want to get the United States involved and, you prefer to stay out of foreign affairs, I completely understand such a thing, but why would you pick the side of evil, right? Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic theocratic terrorists, right? It shows to me that really is that lack of moral clarity that I'm really trying to hone in on here, Jack. And I wonder if you see my point, right? To the extent that I'm trying to make here is that, like, sitting on the fence, right, is it's still making a choice, right? Like Martin Luther King talked about the silence. We won't remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Like, having allies. Like, I understand peace, commerce, honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. That's not been American history. It's always been entangling alliances, even from the man who said those words. Right? So it's like, I pick sides, right? I wonder what you think about that. I mean, how do you respond to that? I mean, do you think that your moral clarity is rare amongst voluntarists in the way that you've articulated? Do you find a lot of people who agree with you, Jack, or do you find yourself to be more on the side of the minority with the morally neutral view which you tend to take?
I mean, I'm definitely more in the minority in terms of total people right now. I think that, due to the media cycle and how people get caught up in that, I think that they follow it to a grave fault. That, they will look at the mainstream news cycle and they'll take that as if that's all that matters and you need to pick a side within this. Otherwise, you're an evil. And for me, my side that I always pick is I choose the side of individual liberty and property rights. And I can, talk about who's worse or better. Like I would agree with you that Hamas ideologically and their aims are worse than Israel. I would say, though, that if you don't have people being educated like Javier Milei does on the principles of liberty, on property rights, on the need for people to have a free market if they want to build inroads to peace, then you won't have peace. And so to me, that's what needs to stand out at the top. And a lot of times that is lost in the discourse. And I am disappointed when people are not focused on teaching people these principles and on saying, how do we get there through free markets, including defense against real terrorists or governments? We need to have that at the forefront instead of saying, well, you need to be for Russia because Ukraine is being supported by the U.S. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You're right, but libertarianism has to be more than just weed, right? And I'm not saying this is you, but I mean, when I talk about like this from an actual defensive perspective, I feel as if many of the libertarians with this foreign policy perspective, and this is not like an intellectual argument so much as a visceral one. This is more of something that you kind of have to feel out to a certain extent. And I'm not saying you should feel out all your politics, but some things you have to operate on instinct. And one of those things is fighting. One of those things is actual combat. I don't know if you ever had any martial arts experience or, like scrapped much at all? Have you ever like gotten into the ring, done any jujitsu, any amount, like taekwondo when you were a kid, anything like that?
Just a little bit of Krav Maga, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and a little bit of boxing, but nothing that,
Okay. So, I mean, so I'm a martial arts instructor. I've had about 20 years of martial arts experience. This guy, Entropy Nomad in the chat says, define your world before it defines you. And you've had the guts to step into a ring mano a mano with another man and to deal with that as a threat and to feel like that fear, and then to have to kind of like deal, you're boxing, right? And you get in and you're kind of sparring around, and your opponent will surprise you. They will do things that you were not expecting. You learn from those mistakes that you make, right? It's hard to learn from a mistake that, of course, involves you getting nuked, right? When you extrapolate this to foreign policy. But the problem that I have seen is that, and when I say libertarians are pussies, it's not all of them, right? But I think when you're a nerd and you've never been punched in the face before in your life, it's really easy for you to talk about violence in a very esoteric sort of, chill way, in cold blood. But until you really kind of experience a blooded conflict, right? And had a mortal danger, even perhaps, or something on the street. Like they say, neocons always said they were liberals mugged by reality, because of course the violent act of a mugging, might make you more of a conservative, right? And then once you get mugged by the government, it might make you more libertarian once you pay your taxes. But nonetheless, Jack, I think, from a visceral perspective, I think the problem that I see is that American libertarianism, it sits underneath the cloak of the umbrella. If you can remember the speech from A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth, of the Colonel Jessups out there, right? And of course, he was the bad guy in the movie, and he ordered the code red. But he had a good point when he talked about the cloak of protection that we sleep under here as American libertarians. And in Argentina, they don't sleep so good at night because of what Iran does in their country, because of what Islamic terrorism has done in Argentina. In other countries where they don't have Colonel Jessups on the wall, where they don't have as the minarchists call it, the night watchman, right? When they don't have the watcher on the wall, their lives are much more in danger. They feel the impending fear, the danger, the real danger that is in their faces. And I can't be lectured anymore, Jack, by these effete men and these stoner chicks about self-defense and foreign policy when they have never been punched in the face. I can't respect you. Not you, right? But the royal you. It's hard to respect someone who cannot take themselves out of their ivory tower of libertarian philosophy and get into the streets and scrap and see how it is. That's what Javier Milei is doing. He's in the streets, he's a street fighter, and these sons of bitches here in the United States that are highly autistic want to question greater men than them. That's fine, you can, it's a free world, but they are not the man in the arena, Jack. Most of us aren't. Bunch of weak little nincompoops. I want to recommend a book to you, and then I want to give you the last word to respond to this. I want you to read, please, for the love of God, please, and share it with read Robert Greene's 33 Strategies of War. It's fantastic. It will it will give your libertarianism balls. It will give your libertarian. It will be you will have the fangs of the snake on the Gadsden flag. The don't tread on me, because don't tread on me has to mean something, right? The violence has to be ready, right? We have to be prepared to do incredible violence. Like, I will bathe in the blood of my enemies, of anyone who violates my nap, if you will, right? But libertarians, they always say, we go to war, we should do so constitutionally, right? But then we want to win the war and then come back in the war. But they never talk about winning the war and what we have to do, which is bathing in the blood of our enemies. Now you can respond and rebut and tell me how wrong I am if you like. Jack, you have the final word.
Sure, yeah. I just talking about what it was with Javier Milei, I do agree with you there that is someone who's actually in the arena, and you get to see in the real world what pushback you get. And I think that's important. If Javier Milei was actually just growing the state in its entirety and he wasn't cutting anything, he wasn't getting rid of agencies, he wasn't cutting government spending, then absolutely Javier Milei should be criticized through and through. But the fact that he actually is cutting government despite all these obstacles and is literally allowing people to have market opportunities with deregulation and opening up airlines and so on and so forth, and rentals, that should be a point for celebration. And so that is so frustrating. I completely agree that when you're in that arena and you're doing the work and you're watching it, someone who is wise and who is judicious and looking at it and really thinking about it should observe that his words and his intentions are matching his actions, but that he is being fought against, even on the streets with the socialists who are getting physically violent and destroying, buildings and setting fire to things. And then Javier Milei is like, okay, I'm going to cut all your welfare checks. And immediately it stops, right? Because they're so addicted to their welfare that they won't even, riot if it means they're going to stop their welfare checks. So it's just kind of silly. And I think when it comes to, this idea of, bathing in the blood of enemies and things like that, I think it is important to recognize that there are people who do hate that you have, freedom and autonomy and the ability to speak freely. And for those who do hate that is where your, objective hate should be. Those who actually hate your ability to have free trade and free speech and to arm yourself. Those are the enemies of liberty. And those are dynamic and across the world. There's definitely tyrants at home, from Kamala Harris and Walz and so forth, to people who want to institute a different ideological rule where if you say anything against the government, you're going to be locked up or you're going to be put to death. I mean, that could be in Saudi Arabia. It could be if you insult the king of, I think, like Thailand or something like that. There are people who are enemies of the Western Enlightenment and that culture. And we need to say, hey, realistically, if we want liberty to win, we have to both defeat those ideas and not allow those people to enact their tyranny and enact their violence. So those things need to be addressed. And I think that can be done through property rights, robust self-defense, and of course, not ignoring the tyranny that we have at home, which is really where the focus should be. It shouldn't be, the U.S. government should be sending money to 100 different countries and, literally funding half the world's governments and all these different tyrannies. They should be actually providing for us the bedrock of liberty by respecting property rights. They shouldn't be destroying our fundamental rights here and then saying, well, we got to send guns to Ukraine while trying to disarm us. It's crazy.
Jack,
so
I think Jack, sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time. But I just want to say this, and I hope you take this the right way, but I think your talents are wasted, bud. And I think your music video is great. But I think that, how intelligent you are and talented you are, that you in the right position, you are destined for greatness. I think that you're well-spoken, you're intelligent. I think you have a sense of moral clarity that others lack. And I think you'll be successful. But I just think that, defending voluntarism, libertarianism in the way that you do is as a last man standing. I get it and all that, but you don't need to fall on your sword, Jack. You don't need to fall on your sword for anybody or anything or any concepts or anything like that. You just need to stick up for what you believe in yourself. I see great things for you, not because that your talents aren't good and use it for the libertarian movement, but and I know that you probably, your spine, is tingling when I say something like this, but you'd be a great representative of your local Republican Party because I want my Republicans to be Javier Milei Republicans, not the populist Theodore Roosevelt Republicans. Jack, where can people watch your music video?
I really appreciate it. They can watch it by going to YouTube. It's on there. You can put End the Fed and then Jack Lloyd, my name up there. You could also go to Jack, J-A-C-K, V as in voluntarius, L-L-O-Y-D, jackvloyd.com, and link to other things there as well. We're on all different social medias, from X to Minds to MeWe to Facebook. So we're pretty easy to find, and our content is all out there. So I appreciate the words of encouragement, and I definitely would love to see a libertarian future for all where property rights are respected for all. So
yeah, Jack, you and I think we tangled in the past, if I can remember, and honestly, I've grown to respect you and admire you. So keep up the good work, and we wish you the best in the future. Thanks for coming on and putting up with my harassment.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate it, Austin. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good one. Thanks, Jack.
You snotty little bastard.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
I'd like an answer to the question, Judge.
The court will wait for an answer.
If Lieutenant Kendrick gave an order that Santiago wasn't to be touched, then why did he have to be transferred? Colonel, Lieutenant Kendrick ordered the code red, didn't he? Because that's what you told Lieutenant Kendrick to do.
Object!
And when it went bad, you cut these guys loose!
Your Honor!
You had markers inside a phony transfer!
Your Honor!
You doctored the logbook!
Damn it, Captain!
You coerced the doctor!
Consider yourself in contempt!
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives, and my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide, and then questions the manner.
It's kind of right. You need me on that wall. Yes, it's the Wake Up America show. 5 days a week, this show streams live, and 2 more brand new live streamed shows coming in 2 weeks. I'm so excited. I'm so scared. Help the For Liberty Network by becoming a monthly sustaining member. You can join either here on Rumble or at wakeupamericashow.com. If you go to wakeupamericashow.com, click the support button. That'll take you to the page where you can become a monthly member. You get discounts at the shop. You get, if you're a $17.76 or above a month subscriber, you get on the family Christmas card list. You get entered into prize drawings and giveaways, and your name goes on the plaque on the wall when we build a new studio that I actually own and is not donated to me. And we do it out there at Stonegate Farm and Nursery, and it's Stonegate Empire, a real empire. Stonegate everything. Stonegate Pictures, Stonegate Media, Stonegate Apps, Stonegate Shipping, Stonegate Manufacturing, Stonegate Pictures, Stonegate Media, all that kind of stuff. And landscaping, lawn and garden. Frank and Bean 76, great show. Have a wonderful day. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope there weren't too many curse words in it. Try and keep it PG-13. We love Jesus, but we curse a little. We'll see you guys here tomorrow. Exit through the Grift Shop. Don't forget, at forlibertyshop.com. Forlibertyshop.com. Get yourself some delicious Founding Flavors coffee, now coming in coffee pods. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow on Thirsty Thursday. The Wake Up America show on what? For Liberty Network. That's right. ForLibertyNetwork.com.
Can you bless me with something?
Oh, gosh.
Money-wise. Please.
Can you suck it?
What?
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet anytime you and I question the scheme.
Want an engaging website to boost your...
Feeling haunted by high prices and big government? Don't be a ghost of your former self this Halloween. We've got shirts that'll keep the ghouls and the government off your back. Inflation's scarier than any haunted house. But hey, why not turn it into a costume? Or how about our spooky government shirt? Guaranteed to spook anyone who's afraid of too much power. But if you're feeling real edgy, nothing says Halloween like our Michael Myers No Lives Matter shirt. Cause when it comes to big government, we all get slashed. At ForLibertyShop.com, we believe in freedom, not fear. So grab your libertarian Halloween gear before the government takes an extra bite out of your wallet. Or your candy. ForLibertyShop.com. Let's make Halloween tax-free.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at APForLibertyShop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit APForLibertyShop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit APForLibertyShop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.